my name is Mike Brightman. My company is Brightman Designs, and we offer design, drafting, visualization, and workflow training services. And so what that means is that we, when it comes to 3D and SketchUp and Lumion and Layout and Condoc, we can either show you how to do that or we can do that for you. So check us out at brightmandesigns.com. Today, though, I want to talk about Lumion 9. So this is the latest release. Really strong release, quality upgrades, more features, more effects, all the good stuff. So that's what we're talking about today, but I'm going to approach it from a few different directions. So one is, showing you how cool these new features are, right? So just showing you that this is an exciting new feature that's going to make your renderings more beautiful, make your workflow faster and all that. Also, I want to approach it from an instructional point of view and show you where these new features are and how to use them, and call out some tips and tricks along the way. So what I'm getting at is there's something in here for the beginners, intermediate, advanced, whether you are new to Lumion and want to better understand the workflow, or you've been using Lumion 8 and you're curious about upgrading, or if you're a pro and you just want to get a few tips and tricks. Stick with me. That's what this webinar is all about. So go ahead and make sure that you type your questions into the live stream chat panel, and at the end of the webinar I'll take a look at those and do my best to answer all the questions. But during the webinar I probably won't pay close attention to the chat panel. Maybe we'll check in once in a while. So anyways, with that said, let's get started. All right, so in Lumion, this is Lumion 9. This is our familiar start screen. Now whenever you're starting a new Lumion scene, you can pick from these pre-built scenarios. Or what I like to do is I load up my template. So you can see that in my Brightman Designs resources templates, I can open up my Lumion default template. All right, so when I do that, check this out. I've already got all of my layers in here. So I have layers for, I have a temp layer. That's where things get imported and placed before I move them somewhere else. And then we have layers for like the site import, the building import, entourage, 3D people versus 2D people, and then some other landscape, trees, flowers, and shrubs. So by loading a template, it means I don't have to add those layers every single time. All right, so that's one tip. All right, let's go to our place mode, and I'm going to import a SketchUp model. So rather than doing the actual import, I already have it pulled in here. You guys have all seen how you can import models from really any modeling program and click to place it. So that's how you kind of import a model into Lumion and then place it. Now check this out. This is let's call out some of the new interface going on here. So over at the left, this is our Objects tab. So these are familiar: Objects, Materials, Landscape, and Weather. On the Objects tab, we have Import New Model. That's kind of the first step, and so it's the first button. Now, these different filters, or these buttons here, when you are working in place mode, they control where you're placing from, and when you're working with Select, Rotate, Scale, or any of these other tools, it controls what you're able to actually select. But check this out. If I just deselect all by clicking on that deselect button, as I hover around on these objects, or on this object, it used to be that you had to click on a node to select it, but now in Lumion 9 you can hover on the object and click, and that'll bring up your selection. Pretty cool. All right, so now I always like to position these models at a known point in space. So I'm going to change this one to 0, 125, and 0. The reason I went to 125 is because I want this to kind of be sitting up high above, because we're going to add in some OpenStreetMap import. We're going to add the ocean in, and I want it kind of sitting up on the hilltop. All right, so we're good there. We are positioned. Whenever you import a model, it's always good to put it at a known point in space. That way, if you're going to import something else, like oftentimes we pull in the site, we pull in the building, and you want them to all line up. So that's the reason behind that. All right, so once you have your model imported, we're going to hop over to our Materials tab. All right, so now as I hover around, take note that in Lumion, it highlights all of these materials that I've assigned in SketchUp. And I can tell you that glass, grass, and water, those are kind of the best materials that really look dazzling in Lumion. So let's go with glass. I'll click here. Now, the first instinct is to just click on glass. That's one preset we have. Another first instinct might be to click on Glass Advanced. That's your pure glass. That works too, so we'll click that. That gives you all these different properties, lots of more like, frostiness and relief and all these different things. The other thing you can do, if I click on here to go back to the material library, is look at our indoor collection. And on the indoor collection, we have glass, and we have all of these pure glass presets. So that way you don't have to invent the glass that you're looking for. Typically, I would go with like interior volume glass or interior glass. That'd be a good place to start. So we'll just do that. And then oftentimes I double click on this preset. And for this one, I might add some relief. So you can see it kind of makes it like that bumpy glass. But the map scale, I think I would change that, make it kind of big, and then dial down the relief. See, if I just give it just a little bit, it just makes it a little bit more of a realistic reflection. That glass is just kind of never absolutely perfect. All right, so glass, grass, and water. Let's talk about water before we get to our new 3D grass. So when I click on our water material here, I could either choose from the same old water that really everybody's using, or if I go back into my nature catalog here and click on water, look at all these presets. So these are really set up nice. We've got like an azure pool, and we've also got like a nice pool. That's pretty cool. And just like everything else, these are all completely configurable. So if I double click in here, we can change the wave scale, kind of mess with that. You can change the wave height and get whatever look it is you're going for this pool. That's pretty cool there. All right, let's get to the good stuff. 3D grass. All right, so in the past we were limited to one 3D grass, so that was excellent when it came out, but oftentimes it was limited. You have this one 3D grass, it has one look, and if you have like different types of grass, if you're doing a golf course or like a front lawn versus some brush, it made it really difficult to kind of communicate that look. There's just no good way to do it. But now that's all changed. So 3D grass materials in Lumion. I'm going to click on this grass here, and you can find those 3D grass materials in the Nature tab of your material library. And I'll go to 3D grass and check this out. I'll click on checkerboard, and then let's just kind of zoom in and get down low here and take a look at this. All right, so you've got like checkerboard patterns, you've got all these different presets. You can have these mow lines, you can have kind of circular patterns, row grass, and even wild grass. So there are a lot of preset options, but what's better than presets is the ability to configure these yourself. You can throw different normal maps in, you can change the grass size, the grass length. Usually I like kind of that finer grass, the bending force as to how much bend and how much gravity is hitting it. You can really craft any look you want to get as many of these different 3D grasses in your rendering as possible, really. So for this particular material, this would not be the case. All right, so this brings me to a point that I want to make, is that the best option for this large swatch of grass is that this should be landscape. All right, so let's go back to our custom, and we're going to go to landscape. Landscape is our kind of default 3D grass, and that's what you're seeing here. That's the old, regular, normal 3D grass. But what I'm going to do is use, the reason I suggest using that landscape 3D grass for your large areas of grass is that it's much more optimized, it's lighter weight, it runs faster. The new 3D grass materials are really high res, detailed, and beautiful. So use those in the foreground and use this landscape grass in the background. All right, so I'm going to click on this next material here, and for these guys, I'm going to go to Nature, 3D Grass, and click on Wild Grass. So check that out. And then, you know what, I might just hit OK for a moment, and let's shed some light on this. So let's just kind of adjust our sun like that, and now you can really get the feel for like how that grass looks. So pretty cool. All right, when we turn on our fine detail shadows and soft shadows, I mean, that's going to be spectacular to have different types of grass going on. And then we can always go like maybe even on the rooftop. Let's throw some grass up there. Just pretend this is a green roof for a moment. We'll go to Nature, 3D grass, and maybe some wild grass on the roof will look okay. So there we go. Pretty cool. All right, so that is our 3D grass. Now, As I've been moving around here, you'll notice that there are some interface changes happening. And so one that's really important to me is a material set. And so the fact that the material set is now up here in this, I guess this is like our advanced properties window. So this is now when you are in the, let's see, when you're on that materials tab and you click on a material, this is where you can save a material set and you can load a material set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up a material set from this model that I've already put together. And so we've got our stall house complete. All right. So what that does, material sets are basically a way of mapping. If you create a material library in SketchUp, you can then import those materials into Lumion. And then you can assign Lumion properties to those SketchUp materials, or you can swap those materials with Lumion materials. So what you do is once you've set all that up, you save the material set. And that way, every single time you use those materials in SketchUp, when you get over into Lumion, you load the material set and all that work is done for you. So what we find is things like grass, glass, water, asphalt, striping lines, concrete, sidewalks. We have like all these materials that we tend to just use over and over and over. So why is it that every time it gets imported, I'm doing that manually? Let's just build a material set, load it, it's done. So that's what I did here. All right, so we've got our material set loaded up, and now our model is properly textured. So I think we're in good shape. All right, and then just to make a point too, this is definitely the workflow. Is you import your model, you texture it, and then next let's add some objects. All right. So we'll go back over to our Objects tab, and we're going to go to Place Mode. All right, so the Place button here, this means that these buttons turn into library filters. All right, so when I'm on Place Mode, these are the library collection filters. When I'm on any of these other tools, these buttons control what I'm able to work on. So you can see that in the Objects tab, we've eliminated that it was like move and place mode. There's kind of two different tabs that weren't totally clear. This has really made it much cleaner, less buttons to push, and just an easier workflow, easier interface in general. All right, so on place mode, I can go in here and let's see. Let's go with, we'll go to our plants, and then maybe I'll just pick something like this one looks good to me. And while I'm placing this now, notice that our object library is appearing in build mode. We no longer get bounced out of our build mode into a library screen where we choose something. And then the other critical thing here is that I'm able to see a live preview before I place any of these plants, which is super handy, so that, if I pick one and I say, you know what, I really don't like that, let's go with the blue. All right. Then the other thing I can do is I can hold R and I can rotate an object, and I can hold L and I can scale it. All right, so that's pretty cool. I can just go in and click there and do that. All right, so let's see. Let's try some other placements here. I'm going to add some. We'll go to our place mode, and I'm going to go to outdoor, and we're going to go with furniture. All right, so again, I can go to my deck chair. I can hold R. I can control the rotation, and then click to place it. All right, so let's just place a couple of these guys like that, and like that, and like that. All right, so that looks pretty good. We've got some of our chairs placed, but now keyboard shortcut M. M gets me back to my select tool. So I've gotten, as I'm working in Lumion 9, I've gotten really used to hitting M over and over, because that's kind of what gets you back to that select tool. And you can see that this object now, let's select this one here. When this object is selected, my advanced properties here are always changing. So based on my selection, I'm going to get different buttons showing up. So notice that these advanced options in my properties dialog it's available on this little extension tab here. Now I have a chair selected. Now these replace selection, focus on selection, find selected in library, select all identical, all of these little buttons here, these were always available in Lumion. They might seem like new features, but they're really not. They used to be buried. So they were in that that context menu, that little wrench, and you had to have all of these different. You'd click on an object, click on the node, and the menu would spider out, and then it was these commands were really useful, but they were definitely buried. So now the commands appear on the screen when you need them, so you don't have to kind of hunt for those. So with this chair selected, I'm going to click on Select All Identical Objects. That's kind of handy. And then the next thing I'm going to do, let's just try a few of these, like Align Rotation. And then I'm going to do a Space Objects Evenly. That's pretty cool. All right, so then I can remove that from my selection. All right, now let's see. Let's talk about another feature, which is placements here. So we're going to go back to place mode, and we're going to go back into our nature library. So remember, when you are on place mode, you then pick your collection from these buttons here. So we'll go to nature, and I'm going to choose a flower. So let's just go like page 3 and pick one kind of randomly. So we'll go with this palm. All right, so now what I can do is let's go with a mass placement. All right, so for mass placement, it seems to work just a little bit differently than it used to. So I'm going to click once to start, hold Control, and you can see I've got some extra stuff in here. So let me get rid of these guys. Okay. All right, and then I can continue to hold Control, and let's see, I kind of goofed on that one. There we go. So we can click and drag these points and hold Control and hold Control, and like that. Okay, so mass placement in that way. You can always hover on a node and control like the curvature of that placement. Now here's what kind of hung me up just a little bit, is that if I want to bring something else in here, I need to first pick it in the library and then come over here and click the plus sign, and that adds it in. So remember, you select it in the library, and then you come over here and click the plus sign to add it in. And then just like always, we can add additional number of items, the direction, random direction, and all of that good stuff, and click confirm. All right, so that was just one little tip for mass placement, is that it seems like before you used to click down in the mass placement dialog, whereas now you kind of select the library first and then hit the plus sign. All right. Oh, let's see. Then we also have this new cluster placement. That's kind of handy. If I zoom out, you can see that like it gives me, I think it's 10 different different locations that are going to drop. And if I hit, let's see, we click, and you can drop those. So cluster placement. And that was always available under the single placement mode if I hold Control, like that. All right. Okay, so that's a few tips on placing objects. Remember, you can now hold R to rotate objects before. You can hold L to scale them, and then our properties dialog is always kind of looking for what's going to be the most helpful command and serving that up when we need it. All right, so what I'm going to do now, though, is rather than trying to decorate this whole thing, I'm going to merge scenes. All right, so the merge scene command, what we use this for is, let's see, this is Stallhouse complete. So I'm going to merge this scene. This is a version of this model that has been completely populated with plants and entourage and all that stuff. All right, so think about this, merge scene. This is a way of taking one Lumion model and dumping it into the current model. And you can choose what you're going to dump in there. So whether you want like the nature, objects, the lights, the model library, imported models, and now we can also bring in cameras. So that's super handy. So this is a way of merging files. Now I can tell you the way that we use this is if we need to divide work amongst a team. So if I'm getting going on setting up our scenes and texturing, I might ask someone else to open that same Lumion file and start planting all the trees. And then they can say, hey, I'm done planting the trees. I just need you to merge the model. So you can do that with lights, with trees and nature objects, all this stuff. So that way you can really divide the work amongst a team, get things done really fast. All right, so I've hit merge model, and you can either skip these categories, or you can remove the models in the current scene and add these, or you can just kind of add the new stuff on top of what you already have. I can tell you that what I want to do is going to be remove what I've done and then put in the others. So you can see I don't want to mess with my imported files, but we'll just kind of drop these objects in on top. I'll say okay. So what that does is it wipes out those trees and flowers that I just put in, and it's going to bring in the stuff that I've more carefully placed previously. So that takes just a moment to bring that in, and we're good to go. Cool. All right, so looking good. So we've got again, I always hit M. M gets me back to the kind of that default state. But we've got our model imported. It's textured. We've got all of our plants around it. And now let's see. Let's keep kind of building the vision here. All right. So as I look around, something that drives me nuts about any visualization is if I can see the horizon. That kills it for me. All right. So off in the horizon, we should be seeing like Los Angeles. We should be seeing an ocean. Something like that. I don't know what the exact view is, but I know that this house sits up on a hill, and we definitely don't want to see this kind of computer-generated horizon. So let's get rid of that. All right. So in Lumion 9, let's see. Let's go back to landscape, and we are going to go to our OpenStreetMap and turn that on. All right. So in Lumion 9, OpenStreetMaps has been drastically improved, and I got to say, it moves much faster than it used to on the downloads. So I'm going to check this and say, okay, we're still in beta and all that. And let's pick a coordinate. All right, so I'll click on this button. I can type in Los Angeles, like that. I'll click on Los Angeles, California there. And then let's zoom in. All right. So I know that like this, I kind of want it to sit and overlook, the ocean here. So I'm just going to turn up the map range and then just import enough so that like I'm getting some kind of an overlook, catching just barely the ocean. All right, I'll click on Start Download, and let's just see what happens here. So it's getting after that download, and look at that. I mean, that's so much faster than it used to be. I am positive that is way faster. So there's been some drastic improvements, a little bit more detail in the buildings, and just like that, I've got some kind of context, all right? Now, like I said, I don't know exactly what we should be looking at. I just know I don't want to see that kind of horizon off in the distance, so or the kind of infinite grass that hits the horizon. So the other thing I can do is I can edit this OpenStreetMap, and I can change the appearance. So for me, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn off the water because I'm going to turn on the ocean. All right, that looks good. The other thing I need to do is I need to lift this up because I don't want the context to be kind of flooded. So I'm just going to lift this up a little bit, just enough so that I can kind of slide the ocean underneath it. All right, that looks good, like that. All right, and of course, there's all kinds of other functions in here, but really what I'm getting at in Lumion 9, much faster. So let's kind of zoom in and take a look at this. All right, so here's where we're getting to. So now we have at least some buildings kind of filling in over there. That looks good. But you can see off in the distance, we're still catching that grass hitting the horizon. All right, so let's go again on our landscape tab. We'll go to our ocean and turn on the ocean. And look at that. So now we've got our ocean in there. That looks good to me. So much better look to this, to not be staring off into an infinite lawn, right? So Lumion makes that really easy to kind of craft that environment around here. Even a view like that is going to be really solid. All right. So let's see. We're good to go there. We can go back to our weather tab. The weather tab's kind of nice too because that one, there's like no other buttons going on. So that's kind of a good tab to be on when you're just navigating around and taking a look at things. All right. So we've textured it, we've dropped in our objects, we've pulled in some context, and we've got the ocean turned on. I think we're in good shape, and so let's hop into our camera studio and take a look at this. So I'll go over here and click on our photo studio. All right, so the photo studio is the first of three. We've got photo, animation, and 360 panorama. Lumion allows you to create stills, animations, virtual tours, and virtual reality. All right, so then when I look around, I'm just going to pick my view, and we're going to take a snapshot. All right, so I just save camera one. And so at this point, I think it's a good reminder. I can show you, I'll show you some styles and how you can get some pretty stunning results rather quickly. And then I'll also show you kind of my default process for what I kind of do every time. All right. So if you're in a hurry and you need this thing out the door right now, click the style button. So let's go with a daytime style like that. All right. So just like that, styles are basically all of these settings that are just, they're going to get a solid output very quickly without you having to think about it, without you having to tinker too much. And let's just render this one and just, you know, appreciate for just a moment how fast you can get to an acceptable, more than acceptable output. So I'm gonna render this to my temp. I'll call this image 1. All right, render this out and look at that. In like seconds, we've got our finalized image. So not bad at all as far as just looking at our styles. That's a great way if you're a beginner, if you haven't done a whole lot with Lumion, stick to the styles. Those will never steer you the wrong way. Another tip is to open one of the example files. Just open an example file and import your model into the example file, because all the lighting setup and all that, it's a good trick. So anyways, the styles in here, that looks pretty good. I mean, for very little effort, that's a very acceptable image in my opinion. All right, so I'll say okay. And let's take a look at maybe another style, like let's go with I'm gonna say realistic, and then we're gonna add another effect on top of this. One of the new effects is under weather and climate, and it's called real skies. Now real skies are pretty astounding. If you just click on select real sky, you can choose whether it's cloudy, evening, morning, overcast, sun setting, or if it's a clear day. All right, let's go with something a little more dramatic like evening. Yeah, and let's go like that. So what this does, it just kind of shifts. Number one, it puts in like that very realistic sky, and it also works with all of the other effects to kind of dial up and optimize all of the lighting in this scene. All right. So I'm gonna go back to the effect stack. You can see real skies is on top. Let's just render that one out. I'm curious what that one's gonna look like. We'll render this as image number 2 and say okay. And this might take just an extra moment, but check that out. I mean, it's working with that skylight effect, and it's so easy to get the look you want. So add a real sky. That's been my new go-to, is like, I don't mess with the lighting or at least the sun effect all that much anymore. Just kind of use that real sky effect. And let's see, let's take a look at image 2. That's what we got. So pretty quick and easy. That's the idea. All right, so then just a quick pointer on real skies is if you ever need to override real skies, you can always add the sun effect on top of real skies. And at this point now, you can override, you know, where the sun is hitting. I don't know that I would recommend it, but I don't do this a lot, but it might come in handy if you just need to kind of tweak the sun. Like, you know, I want the sun over here, but it's just not quite giving the shadows I want. You can cheat a little bit, but in my opinion, it's probably best to not override real skies, stick with what the defaults are, and let it be. All right, so let's see. Let's set up another image here. I'm going to kind of scoot over here and kind of turn looking out a bit like this. Yeah, something like that. That's kind of cool. All right, so then I'll snapshot the view. Usually on exteriors, I try to use more like a 35 focal length, but I start at 35, and then, you know, like this is actually probably better at like maybe something like 25. I don't know. Let's try that again. Back this up and go to 25. Okay. So that just kind of gives a I don't know, less distorted look. And then I'll snapshot my view. All right. Now for this one, I'll just kind of go through, you know, kind of what I normally do. I'll add an effect. I would go with, normally I would add the sun effect, although like I said, nowadays I'd probably just go with skylight. So let me hop over there, or I'm sorry, add real skies. I'll just add a real sky effect. Kind of the normal daytime is like this cloudy 4. That one seems to work well. And then I would adjust my heading, you know, to get the shadows doing what I want it to do. I think if the sun is hitting the pool, that's a good thing. I would go back to my effects, and then let's start over from left to right. I would definitely add shadows, and I always turn on soft shadows and fine detailed shadows. All right, so check this out. Soft shadows, absolutely amazing. And then look at these leaves here, fine detail shadows. You start picking up all these little highlights, lowlights, and all that good stuff. So that's those are the two buttons I always push. And then shadows, you can choose whether it's exterior or interior. I'm gonna go exterior, and I always dial Omni Shadow all the way up. You can see that like kind of just gives more dramatic look on all of the underside of things. So kind of pull shadows. Okay, looks good. Let's add the next effect, reflection. This one's super important. For reflections, preview quality, I'll keep it at normal for now. Speed ray, always on. You can see what that does. Like, check out that floor. What Speed Ray does, it just kind of dials up the quality of the reflections without taxing your computer too hard. Now, the other side of that is adding reflection planes. So I can edit those. And when I go in here and add reflection planes, like, see how this glass is it's not a real reflection. You know, that doesn't look good when you render it. So what I need to do is click the plus sign and then hover on that surface that has a reflection and click. See, now that's a perfect reflection. I didn't quite get this one. I'm just gonna add another one here rather than messing with our settings too much. See, now that we got our perfect reflections. So there, and then you can add reflections to the water. Yeah, so I just kind of dial all those up. And while I'm in here, I'm just gonna kind of back out and we'll add some reflections over here too. So click the plus sign and click here like that. And it's, you know, these faces are kind of not quite perfect. Oh no, that's an open. Yeah, sorry, that's open. But there's some more glass here. So what you can do is adjust some of the settings. I forget it. Let's look at what that setting is. I'll say okay. It is the reflection threshold. If you dial that up, it'll kind of grab more of those planes that are not totally in line. So that's kind of a handy adjustment there. Let me click on this camera and get back there. So it's already starting to look pretty good, and we are only 3 effects in. So let's go back to our effects. We got reflection. You know what? Skylight, I'll add it. I don't like to mess with it. I'm going to add the next effect, hyperlight. I always add that in, whether we have the lights or not. Global illumination isn't going to be critical for this one. 2-point perspective, it now comes in turned on. We're good there. And we won't do any depth of field on this one. Sometimes depth of field, chromatic aberrations, just a little bit of these effects can help, but we'll steer clear of those right now. And near clip plane, this is kind of handy. This will like clear things out of your way if you need to. So like if I didn't want to see some of these chairs, I can kind of like, you know, back those out and like, you know, get a better view without you know, without having to like turn off layers or trick my model. You know, I can use a near clip plane. We don't really need that one right now though, just a tip. All right, and then under weather and climate, we'll get to precipitation. That one's pretty awesome. This is all good. Sky and clouds is kind of handled by real skies. But let me add this. Check this out. When I add sky and clouds, notice what happens. It's blocked by another effect. So if I do try to throw in these things that are going to override, you know, it's already blocked. So let's just get rid of it. So I would just suggest using those real skies and stick with what the offering is there. All right. We're good on everything else. And then the last part of this that I would go for is I always throw like the color correction on there. And this is all, you know, personal preference. But if you want to like knock a little bit of the saturation out of it, that's cool. All right. And let's just render this one. So I'll render that up and do 1920 by 1080. I'll call this image number 3, like that. All right, so then, you know, we're dialing up our reflections and getting a little bit more out of this. So yeah, I mean, you know, not too much effort on that one either. And we're getting a pretty good look out of this. So it doesn't take too long to render. I think we're in good shape. So let's let that finish and take a look. All right, open that up, image number 3, just like that. So pretty cool. Okay, let's get to the next kind of cool new feature. So if you're familiar with any other version of Lumion, you know that when you would turn on the, gosh, I guess it was called rain. We had rain and snow. Well, the rain and snow effects have now been combined into one effect called precipitation. And so what's really slick about this is that it no longer will rain or snow inside your building, which makes it really a powerful effect for interiors. So it can be raining outside or snowing. And then also there's some really cool new functions with the raindrops hitting the pool and then the phase of the rain. So let's get to it. But I think the best way to show you the new precipitation effect is definitely in the animation studio. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. Before I go over there, we have two ways of using the work that we've already done. I can just click on this menu button up here. I can go to Edit and choose Copy Effects, like that. So I can copy those effects, and that way when I go into my animation, I can paste the effects. The other way you can do this is go to the File menu and choose Save Effects. And these are what I call effect stacks. So I'm going to go to... I'll just go to my desktop temp and I'm going to call this one daytime. All right, we'll save it. All right, so this way, when I hop over into my animation studio, and then I'm going to set up, we'll set up a clip or two. And so for this one, I suppose, maybe I'll go kind of inside, let's go like this. And we'll kind of like, pan along this window like here. Something where I can like see the rain falling and I can see that it's being blocked. All right, so I'm going to start on this side, take a photo, kind of move over to this side, take a photo, and then hit play. Now, I can tell you that with animation, slower is always better, so let's just kind of ramp that up a bit like that, and we're good to go. All right, so now let's pause that, check OK, go back to our movie mode. And on this particular template, on the entire movie, I do have some stuff, some other effects added. So I'm just going to kill these effects. That way our clip is what we're really concerned about here. All right, so here's our clip. So like I said, we do have some work that we already did. We created this special blend of effects that's specific to this project. So what I can do is I can either go to Edit and choose Paste, or I can go to File and choose Load. I suppose the difference, they're doing the exact same thing. I mean, there you can see all my effects got dumped into this animation. I suppose the advantage of, I would use the copy and paste by moving, like pretty unique effect stacks within my model. So maybe what I would do is I would save out my effects as an effect stack, and I'd save it as something kind of standard like daytime or nighttime or evening, just so that it's all set up and ready to go. And then I would adjust it for this project. And then once I've adjusted it, then I would copy and paste those in, within this project. And when I say adjusting it for this project, I mean like once I've added some reflection planes, those are specific to this project. So that way I can copy and paste those effects. That's kind of the idea between, two ways of doing it. I think that's the best way to think about it is the effect stack is more generic, and then the copy and paste is once you've like really dialed that in within the project. All right, so now we're moving along here. We've got our panning shot. Let's get to it. Let's add an effect. Let's go with our weather effect, and we'll go with precipitation. All right, so what I've found with precipitation is number one, you can go from rain to snow and anything in between. All right, and let me bump up the particle quantity so we can really see that happening. And I'll just turn up the particle size for now. I mean, I wouldn't actually go this crazy on it, but that's helps us see it. So rain to snow, how slick is that? All right, so we'll stick with rain. Being in Los Angeles here, and you can see that like the rain, it's coming in and it's hitting on the water and it creates raindrops. So that might be something hard to see with a live streaming event, but pretty fantastic. Let's see, the other thing I want to show you on this is the precipitation phase. So whether, I guess the way that I interpret this is like if I slide it to the left, this is like right when it started raining. And as I move to the right, you know, it starts kind of filling up in there. And so, and then the puddles form and the raindrops hit the puddles. Super cool. All right, so let's do this. Let me back out of this for just a moment, and I'm just going to turn off my reflections for the time being. See, that's going to help me just kind of move things really quickly. So that's another tip I'd say is, like, you know, if you're working on other effects, just momentarily hide the effect, you know, or disable the effect. That way you can move around much quicker and, you know, get your work done. So, all right. So then I want to show you some more advanced functionalities here. So what I'm going to do here is let's add another effect, and we're going to go with handheld camera. This is on the camera tab, handheld camera. So one of the things that's kind of cool about this is, you know, this kind of overrides our focal length, so I can dial that up a bit. And then I'm going to go with look at fixed point, and I'm going to hit the target. So we'll just click on this guy here and say okay. And so now as I'm sliding to the right, I'm actually like turning my head to look at that pot. So that's kind of cool. All right, so then what I wanted to do on this one is just get into some kind of like massive advanced keyframing effect. So, and we're gonna run maybe hopefully only 10 minutes over, so apologize about the rocky start there, but hopefully you found us on our live stream page. But let's see, we're gonna pause this for a moment. And when you're setting up your keyframes, we're gonna keyframe our precipitation. So any effect slider that has one of these little squiggles next to it, that can be keyframed. All right. So what we can do is, like, as we're going along, you know, that's where you add these points where there's going to be something that changes. All right. So right at the beginning, the particle size, I suppose, should be at like the lowest possible. All right. And I'm going to add a keyframe. That way it saves it that right at this point, there is no rain. Now, as I slide in and say I get to about right here, I want the rain to start to kind of pick up. So I'll add another keyframe. All right. But I'm not actually going to change it, because from here to here, I want there to be no rain. But from here to here, I want the rain to kind of pick up. We'll go a little further. All right. So now I'm going to add a particle size, and then we're going to bring the rain up like that. Now, let's just take a look at what happens. I'm going to hit play and start from the beginning here. So it starts off with no rain, and then it quickly ramps up, and now the rain is coming. All right. So then you can really get into this stuff too. We can, you know, match these keyframes by using these previous keyframe or next keyframe. So we can jump to those, and then that way we can kind of match the keyframes on other sliders. All right. So as this is happening, I want the fog to come in as well. All right. And so, you know, maybe I want the fog to kind of kick in right here. All right. So we'll go with extra fog addition. Right now, it's pretty much on 0. Like there's no real fog effect happening. All right. And then as we dial it up and get to, let's just go to, I'll go to, let's see, particle size. I'll go to the next one. And then we're going to add a keyframe for fog here. And then our fog is going to turn up. And so you can kind of see the sky gets kind of filled out like that. And then I'll hit, let's go back to the beginning and hit play. So now we've got two things happening. The rain is kicking in, and we're starting to choke just a little bit, but and then the fog kicks in. All right. So pretty cool. Also take note that the rain is, you know, it is not raining inside the house. That's another thing that's really cool. Like if I go and set up another clip here and go, like, you know, look this way, and let's see, I'll just set up like a quick shot from here to here like that. We'll hit go, and then for this one I'm going to take these, we're going to copy, so edit and copy effects, and then we're going to go to the next one and choose our edit, and we're going to paste these effects like that. Now in this particular one, we're going to kill the handheld camera, and then on precipitation, let's see. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete the precipitation and add it back in, and that way we kind of get rid of those all of those different keyframes. Let's take a look at this clip. See, now it's raining outside, not inside. And also, if you want to dial up the snow and the particle size, I mean, that's fantastic. If you've got like a fireplace or something in your projects to make it snow outside, add that atmosphere. Cool. All right, to see the whole movie, click here. And so now we've got the rain coming in, and then you can see the line in the middle of the timeline, flips to the next clip, and there we go. So that's the new precipitation effect. Okay, back to build mode for just a moment before I wrap things up. This is another feature that I think is absolutely killer that maybe is a little more difficult to find or doesn't jump out at you. You know, the effects are easy; those stand out. That's easy to notice. But saving groups, this is a really cool new feature, and I'm excited to get this one, kind of get our libraries all set up and really use the groups functionality. So the way that I see this effect, or I'm sorry, this function being used is like this house, you know, like let's say we've gone to all this extent of picking all these different plants that make sense in California. And so now I go to the next project and I don't have to go pick out all these plants again. I want to save these plants as a group. All right. So let's do that. I'm going to hop in here and I'm going to go to my select tool. And then when you're on the select tool, you can control what you're able to select. So that's what these buttons do when you're using the select, move, scale, delete, and all that. So if I wanted to move some cars, you know, I would go to the transportation, or I would go to select all categories. All right. So for this one, I guess I can just kind of you know, work within the system and only select plants. So again, I don't have to click on the node. I can just hold Control and add to my selection like this. And let's see, let me go back. Let's see, add, and then so we're going to select a few plants. I guess I don't really need to select multiple of the same one. I kind of want to just grab a few of these that are, we're going to pull it in as a group, and then we're going to probably explode the group and then just, you know, work with those trees in that way. So I can add the current selection to a group like that. Once I've added the selection to a group, I can now save the group. So that's the new feature. Is up here on your advanced properties window. We can save this group. And what I would probably do is I'd stick with my, you know, BD underscore, you know, plants, and then I would do like space dash space. I'd say, I'll just say California. So that way I could probably have groups for like Pacific Northwest and Texas and Ohio. If you group these things and save them, that way every time you go to that next project, all you're going to do is just pull in this group. So I'll save it like that. All right, so now that's a group. Truth is, I really don't need it to be a group, so I can just ungroup that now. All right, so here's the idea, is that when I get on to that next project and I want to pull that plant palette in, I need to bring in a group. All right, so then to do that, I need to be on place mode. And here's what kind of hung me up a little bit, is that on place mode, you know, you're going to select from, you know, transportation, trees, lights, and all that. In order to place a group, I need to go to select all categories and see place, select all categories, and now I get load group. All right, so I can load up a group, and there's my plants from California. I'll choose open, and so something's cool about this is that they're pretty lightweight files. It's my understanding they're just holding on to the reference in the Lumion library. So we'll pull that in, and then we're going to click to place it like that. And now I can go back to my select tool, and you know, like I said, I would probably just ungroup this, and now it's saved in my model. So I don't know, that one between material sets, that's a way to get really jumpstart your efficiency in Lumion. If you get your material set set up and then you save out your plant palettes as different groups, I can see how this is going to save a ton of time. Just got to be a little bit more disciplined about it. So very good. So let's see. Let me just take a quick look. I think that's everything I really wanted to touch on for this webinar. A few minutes over, but anyways, I'm going to wrap it up, and then I'm going to hop over and take a look at our chat panel. But to kind of close out of our official webinar, again, I'm Mike Brightman with Brightman Designs, and we do offer design drafting, visualization, and workflow training services. Please hit that subscribe button on YouTube so you get those notifications, and sign up for our newsletter. We've got a lot of new tutorials coming out. Lumion 9 gives us all kinds of good ammo, so I'm psyched about that. So please stay in touch, follow us and all that, and appreciate you guys watching today. So we'll catch you in the next one. All right, so now I'm going to hop over, give me just a moment to find our YouTube live feed and take a look at some of the questions here. All right, so then a few questions. Let's see. Clicky. Yeah, so Dean Robbins says, it would be nice if there was a tutorial on creating proxy objects for use in mass placing landscape design elements. I got to tell you, I've got something ready for this, and it is really cool. If you've ever done node placements in Lumion, that's where you build like a real simple proxy. Again, I always use SketchUp, but let me pop this out. Hold on. This is distracting. Pop out and minimize. Okay. If you've ever done node placement, that's where you create this proxy and then you pull those into Lumion, and then it's the equivalent of like a component swap, of like being able to plant trees in SketchUp and then swap them out in Lumion. It's not exactly that, but it's the next best thing. So I've got something lined up for that. So look for that early next year. Okay, and then regarding parallel projection, yeah, I've definitely heard this one, and I've also asked this question before. And, you know, my understanding is that Lumion is a 3D program. And, you know, so the question being, can we add parallel projection? Like, it would be awesome if we could make flat plans, flat elevations. But the fact that everything in Lumion is designed to work in 3D, it's kind of tricky to then flatten that stuff out. So that's my understanding of kind of the challenge on that. Not to say that it might not come in the future, but it's one of those things where you got to judge, you know, like which features do you want? You could spend the whole year working on that, and if that was the only thing, it might not be that exciting. So and then yeah, VR. I've heard that a million times. But the truth is that Lumion has a very, very solid solution for VR. All right. So I know that what you're referring to is probably that you want real-time walkthrough VR. Now, the challenge with real-time walkthrough VR is that it requires a heavy computer. It requires a headset with a bunch of cables. It requires a lot of setup. So we're talking about cost. We're talking about like hardware. Somebody who like really knows how to do make a computer work to make all of that stuff happen. And I got to tell you, I have all that gear, and sometimes I have problems. So, you know, the beauty of Lumion's solution to VR is that it is predictable, it's polished, it's rendered, you can create multiple views, and also it's controllable, because when you put a client in VR, the first thing they do, I mean, they put on the headset, and then, you know, hey, hold out your hands, and then you got to like hand them the paddles. And then you got to explain to them how to navigate around. And you always spend the first, like, I don't know, 20 minutes screwing around, and they're walking into walls. And with the solution that we get out of our 360 Pano Studio, what's beautiful about this is, like I say, it's rendered. So, like, it's super easy. I can either use a style, you know, just go like style. Oh, I'm sorry. Style's not in there. So I'll go to, I'll go to File, Load Effects, and let's just load up our daytime. And then, you know, you can render this out, and we can render it for the Gear VR, stereoscopic, and turn on our advanced settings. I can tell you that for me, I think that like 100 slices is right on the cusp of what you're going to notice. It takes far less time to render, but if you have the time, definitely go, you know, 360 is great. 180 is fine, but test it. When I tested it 100, below 100, I saw it kind of getting sliced. Above that, it was couldn't tell the difference. But point is that when you render these, they can go on your phone. They can go on like the Oculus Go is sweet for this. I mean, you just load them up and think about it. There's no wires. You don't need internet. You don't need a super powered computer. You can bring this super cheap VR headset and it's predictable. I mean, we saw today, like no matter how much you think you got this stuff figured out, when it's go time, it all goes downhill. So, like the same thing goes for a client presentation with VR. I would be very, very hesitant to put a client into the full-on VR, but some people do it and they like it. That's my take on it. How do you mix grass styles on same object? Basically, grass materials are just materials. So like if I wanted a different grass, I would have to paint it with a different material in SketchUp or in my modeling program. So as long as it's a different material, it can be a different grass. And transparent setting for the effect. Let's see. Oh, question from Dean there about the movie clips being jerky. Oh, they totally normalize. So once it's rendered out, the movies are super clean. It's doesn't, I don't think I was showing it in the best light. So once that's rendered, it takes a few moments for it to render, and then it's going to be really smooth animation. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, the import edges, that's a new feature. I'm not real psyched about that one. I goofed around with it. It's just not something that I need. It's not so much the amount of edges. I don't think that's the deal. It's really, when it brings it in, you have the edges and you can assign a material to the edges. I goofed around with it. I added like an emissive material to my edges just to see what that would look like. But it just wasn't something I really needed. I suppose if you're doing like sketchy effects, it would kind of dial up that look. So, and Brittany, yes, excited for these new features. I will show you. Katya, thanks for coming in. Yeah, grass growing through the building, that is all about modeling. I did not build this model. So if you have a surface and you put grass on this surface and then you have the concrete right here and then you tell this surface to grow grass, it is going to kind of poke up through the concrete. So you just got to like not put grass under your concrete. Let's see. Multiple undo. Yeah, that's another one. I've heard this answered before, and we joke about it because I guess I was the same way. I said, why can't I hit undo several times? Truth is that it's just not. It's just Lumion's different, and it's just something that in order to incorporate a feature like that, you'd have to kind of overhaul the whole thing. And it's me personally, I'd rather have 3D grass, I'd rather have precipitation and snow and real skies and all these cool new effects rather than just like more undos. So I've learned to live with it. It's I make a little bit more careful clicks and it doesn't seem to be a problem anymore. So and then boot camp with Lumion, that is an unsupported environment. I know that for sure. It'll probably work, but the truth is that Macs don't have heavy-hitting graphics cards. So, I think the iMacs, I did some research on this, and I think the iMacs have like enough to run it, and if you put it on Boot Camp, it could work, but my best advice on that is to switch to PC, and you'll never regret it. I know that's going to shake things up here, huh? But no, there's no Mac version, and it'll probably run on Boot Camp, but it is not a supported environment. Scaling and mask placement, you can do it, but once you scale it, it only does the first one, and it like doesn't keep that scale. So you would be better to mask place and then select them all and then scale them all. So Shannon, what's happening? Why do you specify the origin manually in Lumion? If you have models aligned in the native program, does this give me any additional advantage? The only advantage you'd have to setting the position manually is what we do sometimes is we'll create one SketchUp model for the site, and then we'll create one SketchUp model for the building. And that way, one of us can work on the site, one of us can work on the building, and then they can combine into Lumion. So the other way you could think about that is if you were building a site in Rhino and your building is coming from Revit, you just want them to have the same origin, and that way when they all come in, you set them all at that, I always use 050, but it honestly doesn't matter. Just as long as you know where you're putting it, you can always find it too. But you just put it in the same point, they all stack on each other, and you don't touch them again. That's it. Let's see. Brad talking about time-lapse. For time-lapse, the best way to do that, I've done some tutorials on, if you rewatch this one, this will be recorded. You can keyframe like the clouds, and you can't do this with real skies, but you could, forget the real skies, add the normal Lumion clouds, and you can keyframe the position of the clouds. So now the clouds are zipping by, and then I would add the sun effect, and I would keyframe the height of the sun. So now you've got the sun coming down like time is passing, and you've got the clouds, zipping overhead as if time is passing. So that's the best way to do a time lapse. I think a friend of mine, Chris Welton, I know I've seen something cool that he's done with that. You might check out his channel too. Let's see. When you import a Lumion material library, does it basically replace the SketchUp materials with the Lumion custom library materials of the same name? Yeah, think of it like this. This is what we do, is we have our material library for SketchUp. So I like to assign all of my materials in SketchUp. That way the SketchUp model looks the way it's going to look in the real world. I don't like to paint everything pink and blue and purple in SketchUp and then assign grass and glass and water in Lumion. That's not the way I like to work. So if I pick the same material, or if I have a material that has a name to it that's not going to change, that's what's important. You can't like assign these materials, build your material set, and then change the name. You want to get your material library in SketchUp all set up, paint those materials, and then when you load in that material set, it's going to just map to those texture names. And so it's going to be whatever you tell it, So what I do for that, this is another one of our blog posts that we've got like kind of half baked here. The node placement and the material libraries, these are all things that are like, halfway there. So we'll hustle and get those done. But the idea is that like what I've done is I've created a SketchUp model with a ton of cubes, and each one of these cubes has it's all broken down exactly the same as the material library in Lumion. So then in my SketchUp model, which is like this kind of material library SketchUp model, I just add my materials in there, I rename the materials, and then I save them back to my library. So then I import that SketchUp model that has all these cubes with all these different materials on it, I import that into Lumion, and then I start setting up all of my Lumion properties, or I start swapping those SketchUp materials with Lumion materials. And then I save that material set. So now I have a material set that is linked to my SketchUp material library. And if I load it, whenever I start a new project, as long as I use those SketchUp materials, I just load the material set and I'm good to go. So, all right. Katya, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's see. And Paul, this will be ready soon. I'm pretty sure that it crunches for a little bit and then it'll be up on our YouTube page. Yeah, rotating objects and mass placement, you can, but again, I think that it only does the first placement. So I was a little bit bummed about that. Like, well, let me just check that. So when I go into build mode, and if I do a mass placement, so I'll just hop over here in the front lawn, and all right. So if I go to place mode, and we're gonna place a tree as mass placement, and let's go with I'll go with a palm tree, or something like this. All right. So if I like rotate it like this, and then I use the scale of L, and then I'm going to click and click. Yeah, see, it doesn't hold on to that. Let me verify that. So number of items. Let me say okay, and then I'm going to do it again. So from here, actually, I'm going to hit L and go from here to here. See, it's like it's not really holding on to that scale. So as far as I can tell, it doesn't really, that functionality doesn't work in mass placement, but I can tell you that it's rather easy to just finish your mass placement, and then you can just kind of like select all these, and then if I hold L, I can scale these up pretty quickly. So no big deal, just that functionality isn't there. All right. Is there a way to change the lens, depth of field, focal distance in Lumion 9? Distorted or flat because of Lumion's wide lens. So yeah, Brad, for sure. If you go into your photo studio and take a look at this, here's your focal length. So yeah, you can adjust the focal length. And in my opinion, if you're working on like an exterior rendering, like if I kind of zip around like this, I think it looks better if your focal length is not, you want it to be kind of high. Like I don't want a look, that's like so distorted. So I would stick with something closer to like 35. And I already forget. I did some research on this and landed on, 35 is kind of a good place to start. And then if I'm working on interiors, I would probably try to keep it high, but you can see it's rather difficult on an interior to capture, more of the room. So I would back this down until I'm getting something that's not completely distorted. I think something else that's going to help with this is if you add in for your camera 2-point perspective. Seems like that's a common comment. Yeah. So depth of field, focal length is controlled here, and it's also can be overridden with that handheld camera. So that handheld camera will adjust your focal length. Yeah, and then a question about using proxies in Lumion instead of having 600 megabytes or more file size. I mean, I would say there's a workaround. I can imagine how you could do it. I think you'd be better just, I don't think it's going to be a clean workflow. It's not what I would do. What I would recommend is if, I don't think you're going to get to trimming down the file size, but I think layers are going to be a huge help. Like I was showing at the beginning, if you if you set up your layers in a template, then it makes it easy to use those layers over and over. So if I were to do that in here, if I hop over into build mode, and it's kind of easy now just to go to my select tool. If I click on this tree, check out this. We have like select all identical objects or select all objects in category. So that's everything in landscape. So then I would come over here and I have landscape trees. I'm just going to throw everything on my landscape trees layer and turn it off. So now immediately, I've increased my performance. I haven't reduced my file size necessarily, but at least things are moving faster. So, using layers is going to help. And we talked about scaling and mass placement. Okay, yeah. Movements for time lapse. I did dabble with this a little bit as far as like, speeding up people. And I've seen. I spoke to a gentleman. And again, I think Chris Welton knows something about this. He might have a tutorial, or maybe that'd be a cool thing for him to share. I'm not sure, so I won't speak for him on that. But I think there is a way to kind of make better time lapses. I've seen it done. It's pretty cool. As far as like the speeding up people and cars, no, you can't do it. I forget what the effect is called. I was hoping it was called time warp. I was hoping that would do what you're asking for. It doesn't, but all right. You have sky reflected in your interior floor. How to fix that? So, here's a pointer on reflections. All right, check this out. If I go to my objects, place mode, and we're going to go with lights and utilities, and then we're going to go with utilities. And see this thing? This is our reflection control. All right, watch what happens. See the reflections on the windows? Watch what happens when I place this like that. See, they changed. And then I can hold H. Let's see. Now I got to go to select and hold H and then move this up and watch what happens to the reflections. They change again. So this reflection control, these are the default reflections. That's where they're coming from. So this reflection control, it's kind of tough, you know, if you know, because what happens is like when I go into this room, like see how this is showing up. Let me go back to place everything. All right, so see how we're getting this reflection on here? Like that's definitely not ideal. So what you got to do is go into photo, and the first thing I would do is like let's just see how we get rid of that so I can do it exactly. I would go with reflection. And then I would hit speed ray reflections. See that speed ray kind of cleans that stuff up right away. The other thing, you know, if it were something like that's a pretty insignificant surface, but yeah, speed ray seems to be the answer to that. But see this one, it's not quite perfect. So like speed ray cleans up this guy, but now on this one, I would add a reflection plane, you know, specific to this view. And so now when I'm looking at that, it's actually reflecting what's behind me. So the solution to that one is just kind of using those reflection tools. So okay, so can the I'm not sure on that crater materials. I'm not sure on that one what the question is. And then Alex, how much of what we're showing here is Pro only? I'm not positive, but I do know that if you go to Lumion.com and look at the product page, there's a very clear like a matrix of what are the different features and how many objects and all that. As far as like how many more materials are in Lumion 8, a lot. I think I want to say it was like 400 materials. I know this came up right at the end of when I was recording some of those tutorials, but again, if you go to the product page and look at all the specifications, you can find that. Let me show you. I'll go to Lumion.com and we're going to go to product. And then from product, we're going to go to specs and compare, and then view full specifications. Now this is handy. So here's Lumion, here's Lumion Pro. So, you know, this kind of gives you the rundown. So it looks like, I don't know, just some materials, some effects and all that. But you could kind of pour through this stuff. Looks like you can, you know, look through all these different tabs. This is kind of handy. I actually haven't seen this in a while, and this is really nice what they've done. I can't speak to how many are new, but looks like there's like a little over 5,000 models in Pro. That's pretty cool. All right, and yeah, so Brad asking about proxies, and so like I'll give you like the sneak peek of that here. I'll let SketchUp open, but the idea is that I have a proxy for lights, line lights, trees, and shrubs, and I've really like isolated and drilled in and understood how the axes affect the placement of these objects, and it's really slick the way that works. So I think I can just show you a quick glimpse of oh shoot, you know what? My screens are kind of messed up. My SketchUp is landing on a shared screen right now, and I can't open that right this second. That's a kind of a problem. But anyway, we do have a library of these proxies, and I will make a tutorial on those. They're all finished. I just kind of half baked. Gotta get to it. Brittany, is there a way to automatically place lights based on an object material coming from SketchUp? Lights with the same material automatically associate with lights in Lumion. Definitely. So that's really what I'm getting at with these proxies is like I have a component in SketchUp and you can place all these lights and then you do this thing called a node placement in Lumion. And I got to tell you, I couldn't live without that command. If you've never used it, it will save you so much time when you're placing, like if you're building a model, you know, like I'm looking at this room here and we've got these track lights and, you know, they're all pointing in different ways. I would just copy all those lights, make them unique and swap them with my proxy. So now I can like, I've already placed the lights, now I can place the proxy and then I can swap it for a light object in Lumion. It's actually kind of a clunky workflow, but it works. And once you've done it, it'll save you hours and hours and hours. So the other thing that's really important about that is if you have like a room and there's like a regular pattern of lights, you need those lights placed at perfect intervals. Otherwise, the scalloping on the walls doesn't look right. So, or it just looks different. Let's see. And we can talk about that next week. So, can people or vehicles have opacity? Can you add opacity to created layers? I think the short answer to that is no. Although you could do some Photoshop trickery. You could definitely do that. And you know, render out in different layers and kind of you know, get that to work. Let's see, the real-time ray tracing in that new 2070 or 2080 or whatever it is that just came out. Yeah, that is the best of my knowledge. No, that is not supported yet. So. And then how to bring cutout people to Lumion. Bring cut people to Lumion. Not sure on that one. You know, you can always import like a 2D cutout person and then make them a billboard material. And yeah, we actually have like a huge library that we've been working on where we actually have people come in our office and we take their photo. So check this out. I'll try and import one. Let me see if I can do that. We'll go to import new model. I'm going to go to Dropbox under Brightman Designs, cut out people and production, and we have a starter pack. And we'll go with our SketchUp models. And so we have like sitting, standing, we got all kinds of stuff. So I'll import this and we'll say, okay. Like that. Okay, so once that person is in there, and you see what I did, I just placed it on a layer that was turned off. There's our friend Roxanne. All right, so now what I can do is go to my materials and I can make her into a billboard. And so now wherever I go, she's always facing like that. Cool. So, you know, these cutouts are available on a lot of different sites, but I got to tell you, we've been building a collection ourselves, and the advantage of what we've got going on is, I'll show you. Let me see if I can make this work. I'm going to select Roxanne, and we're going to, let me clear my selection. This is something I haven't done yet in 9, so let's see. I want to add a variation. There we go. So add variation. And I'm just going to pick the next one down and say, okay. All right, let's see. So now she's looking the other way. So this one person has 2 different poses. How cool is that? So now when I go into my movie mode, or I'm sorry, my photo studio, I can add the effect for my variation control. And on this one scene, I can choose, I have to actually choose her and say, yes, we are going to control her variation. And then I can say, you know, yeah, like that. Like that is really cool, in my opinion. The ability to, you know, change, it's either 1 or 2 is what we're getting at. The ability to change the people in my image, because otherwise you end up with that same person who shows up in every single image. It doesn't look right. This allows you to like tell a story between all of your images, so it's the same people, but they're all doing different things. So that'll be a really cool new product we have coming out next year. So let's see. Nice. Glad to hear it, Brad. Okay, Brittany asking about watermark images. Totally a way to do that. Add the effect, and this effect is image overlay. So it's over here on the end under various, image overlay. And then all you do is, you choose your file, and I cannot remember off the top of my head where ours is saved. But what you want to do, what I would recommend is I would create a in Photoshop, you're going to create like a blank canvas, put your logo there, and you're going to save it as a PNG. That way, when you import it here, it's going to have transparency. Yeah, I could just load in let's just throw, let's see, Brightman Designs, admin, marketing, logos, Brightman Designs. There we go. All right, so I don't think I could just throw a logo in here. So that's not what you're going to want. See how it stretched it? You need to create an image in Photoshop that is, I would make it 3840 by 2160. And, because when you render this, you want it to be exactly 3840 by 2160. That's what we always render our final images at. And then you would put your logo in there, and then you'd save the whole thing out with everything else. No background. It needs to be transparent. So, all right, so we'll kill that. Yeah, glad to hear that works better, Brad. And different aspect ratios. I don't think, I really am not sure on that one. I would recommend, render it and then pull it into Photoshop. That way you can get any aspect ratio. But to keep things simple in Lumion, I doubt they're going to do that. But who knows, maybe. Alex, cutting out people in SketchUp. I guess there's quite a bit to it, but you just kind of trace them. Import the image, scale it, trace it, and maybe we'll have a tutorial on that someday too. But we do use some other scripts as well that we run to kind of get the line work and jumpstart that process of cutting these people out. So cool. So I guess that's kind of the end of the list there. Again, apologize for the slow start, but thanks for sticking around and asking questions. And appreciate you guys coming in today. And I guess don't hesitate to reach out and find us at brightmandesigns.com, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial.